you've mentioned about the kind of AdWords that are more generic and that are harder because in terms of like the way the auction works. I really like the analogy of eBay and thinking of it in that kind of mindset. That really helps. So you've obviously got the tools that you can look at. You mentioned the ones that are in your blog, but how do you go about doing all this? Like, is it something, let's say someone like me could kind of just guess on what to do when it comes to thinking about what to do, or do you need to? I remember a company I used to work for, they would speak to Google and they had like a campaign manager and all the rest of it. But, you know, can anyone do it? Do you have to do your research? Do you go onto YouTube? Do you hire someone like you? What do you do?
Well, in terms of coming up with the keywords specifically, then yes, anyone can do it. So yes, there are tools that will tell you, but actually my preferred way of doing it, and this is what when I've run training on Google Ads, this is what I try and encourage the people I'm training to do as well, is rather than relying on the tools, try and actually use your own imagination and your own kind of lateral thinking and whatever. And it's basically put yourselves in the shoes of your potential customer. And that's always hard for any business owner or any marketer, because, if you work in a particular job or a particular business, you get engrossed in that and you think in a particular way. So maybe, if you're struggling to think how your client would think, talk to some actual clients, or talk to some friends or whatever and say, if you were looking, what I do for a living, if you were looking for this, what would you type into Google? And there's a story I often tell of a really good example of that was years ago. I was running a Google Ads campaign for a company, a firm of solicitors who specialized in what they in the industry call medical negligence or clinical negligence claims. So basically, someone's been to hospital, had an operation, it's gone wrong, and they want to claim compensation for it. And like any kind of personal injury stuff, because we were talking earlier on about that, weren't we? Any kind of personal injury stuff, the cost per click is massive. And I thought, well, before I started talking to these solicitors, I'd never actually heard the term medical negligence or clinical negligence. Obviously, I could work out what it meant, but it wasn't in my vocabulary, as it were.
It's not your standard day-to-day terms.
And I thought, well, therefore it's probably not in the vocabulary of their typical potential client. And I thought, okay, so put yourself in their shoes. You're sitting at home, you're off work because you've had this operation go wrong, or you've been misdiagnosed, or whatever it is. What do you want to do? What's the outcome you're looking for? Because people don't buy services, they buy outcomes. And so I did a little bit of research on the idea that I'd had, and then I set up the ads for it with this new keyword, and it worked a treat. We cut the cost per click from around £20 down to £4.
Oh, wow.
And that keyword was sue the NHS.
No way.
Yeah, and
I
always remember, because when I told the guy I was dealing with at the law firm, I've tested this and this and it, he said, I don't know if we want to be, some of that, because that sort of, cheapens what we do a bit, or, And I said, okay, but that is actually what you do, though, isn't it? You sue the NHS. And he said, well, yeah, we do, but, and I said, well, it's £4 a click rather than 20. He said, oh, go on, man, run with it. And, and we did. And because we tied the whole thing together. So not only was the keyword that, we made sure that in the advert, it said something like, want to sue the NHS, we can help. And so, of course, again, when all these other adverts are talking in stuffy language about negligence and blah, 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 and suddenly you've got this advert that stands out as, talking the layman's language, people were attracted to that. So, these are guys, we're on a level with these guys. They talk the same language we do. And obviously, after a while, other advertisers caught onto it. But for a good few months, we had a definite lead on them just by putting yourself in the client's shoes, which is not a new marketing concept. It's what good advertisers and marketers have been doing for God knows how long.